Bad Bad Not Good are very much the opposite of the band name that they chose. They are in fact very good, not bad. And I think anyone that's been aware of modern 2010s, post-2010s jazz would accept that they are pretty damn talented in what they do. I think they have always given off a really creative spark in their music, I guess you could word it like that. They've always just understood the assignment, I think, when it comes to jazz. They've done their history, they've done their homework, they've managed to recreate and reimagine songs from the past and bring them into the new jazz world, especially in their earlier stuff. I'll always praise this band for their fantastic rendition of Flashing Lights by Kanye West. I think that's one of their most recognizable tracks. I mean, usually for an indie artist, a cover of another artist's song is, you know, the most famous work anyway, but you can see why. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Even with all that said, I've definitely underrated these guys for quite some time. I mean, I've not actually listened to every album they've put out. There's been quite a few of their albums that I've not heard in years at this point, so I've kind of let them fly under the radar. But this new album I was pretty interested in, just because it's been a few years since their last one, and I thought there's no harm in checking this out. Why not just give it a go, see what it's like? And it was not a mistake to do that. This album is brilliant. It's very much what we've expected from these guys so far. It's certainly nothing really new, I don't think, in their discography, but I think it's just so refined, and everything about this album just sounds so professionally done that you just can't deny the musicianship on almost every track. The live, in the moment, improvised feel of some of these instrumental passages is there again. It's always been there in this band's music. It almost feels like everything they do is just in the moment. They haven't even sat down and, you know, decided the route they're going to go down, and it just kind of flows naturally. I'm not sure if that's exactly what they do, but it's how the music feels. But there's this magical aura that's wrapped around these songs on this album, whereby they just give off this wonderful sensation, and it could be missed, I think, because the first listen I gave this album, I wasn't exactly, you know, hooked in the whole way, but the more I kept listening to it, the more I just found so many of these tracks absolutely beautiful. One of the best features of the opening track, Signals from the Noise, is that electric guitar. I mean, the way the track bursts into action is fantastic anyway, as it sort of builds throughout, but the electric guitar that's used here is absolutely stellar. It's a great addition to the album, and they do it a few times, and it just sounds so good. And the way they're fusing all of these sounds together with this electric guitar, I think is absolutely brilliant. The City of Mirrors track starts the run of tracks that we get with Arthur Verocai on feature here, and these are some of the best tracks on the whole album. I mean, firstly, the piano playing on this particular track, excuse me, I do still have a cold. Yeah, the piano playing on this particular track is just beautiful. I am a bit of a slut when it comes to piano playing in jazz music. I think it just adds such a beautiful sound to what you've already got going on in the wonderful instrumentation that's all over the place on this album. But I just think the piano, the tone of the piano just works so wonderfully in this track and so many other jazz songs. Beside April again brings back the electric guitar. I think this is once again just such a great addition to these tracks. It makes the whole thing sound bloody dynamic. It sounds like a huge cinematic piece, and just the vibrance in instrumentation, again, with everything that's going on, it just is such a rush of sounds that just is really, really great on the ears. And Love Proceeding ends the 3-track run with Arthur on it. This track is just absolutely wonderful. It is just such a romantic sounding song. I think the strings elevate this song to a new level here. My God, it just sounds like the perfect, you know, movie scene where the two the two people fall in love or some shit like that. You know, that kind of cringy film stuff. But you also kind of sit there like, and you're like, it's cute, it's cute. But the cynical side of you is still there, being a bit like, ugh. But at the same time, you're like, ah. There is a beside April reprise, which I was quite surprised that there was a reprise for this track, but not really disappointed either, really, to be fair. I mean, Jesus Christ, this track is so lovely. And holy shit, the melancholic strings that come through with the piano just makes it sound like such a sad song, but it's so gorgeous and beautiful. The track Timid, Intimidating, though, is not to be missed. This track is absolutely spellbinding with the really, like, gushing instrumentation that comes through. There's a point in this song where it actually reminds me of Flying Lotus, with the kind of buzziness that's kind of attacking your ears, but it still sounds so great. There's so much going on in that section that you would miss so much if you weren't fully paying attention, but when you do, you're just not sure what exactly to focus on, but it is just all kind of rushing at you at such a pace, but it sounds fantastic. And the rest of the track, again, like I say, is just wonderfully spellbinding. There's just so little to critique with this album. I mean, at worst, it's just fine with the final track. I mean, the final track does sound magical, but I think it doesn't really close things out in the best way it possibly could. It also does what so many of the other tracks were already doing, so it's not a bad track, but you know, it's just okay. Like I say, I think if you isolate it on its own, it still is pretty magical sounding, but I think when you've already heard so many tracks that was pretty similar from start to end, it just ends up being like, yeah, fine, but we've heard them do it already. But aside from that, like, there's very little to critique. I mean, what can I even say? This album just hits a spot, and it is just so well crafted and designed that you just can't deny the talent in these guys. They are just absolutely brilliant. So many of these tracks are pitch perfect in the way that they're structured, the way that they're performed. Like, there's just so much to love. And the added elements throughout this album that are sprinkled in, you know, like the electric guitar, are just genius ideas, I think. And, you know, not only is it just all well made, it just gives you such nice feelings throughout as well. Like I said, at times it's romantic, at points it's melancholic, at points it's just so wonderful that it just makes you so happy when you listen to it. 8.5 out of 10 from me. One of the best albums I've heard this year. Easily one of the best albums I've heard in October as well. Don't let this one slip you by. I think these guys are pretty well known amongst indie, you know, music nerds, but just because you might not have liked their last album or something, you'd be, you know, mistaken not to check this one out, because I think it is absolutely worth your time. Definitely a highlight for jazz this year as well for me, and yeah, can't really praise it enough. So thank you for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, subscribe if you haven't already. Tell me what you think I should review next, and goodbye.